Welcome on back. This is the All Aussie Rules podcast, episode number 19. Thanks for joining me. Big weekend of football just been. This is the round 7 review. Anzac Day weekend, and it was a absolute cracker. This week's episode we'll be having a look at the latest news to start with, as we start all episodes with. We'll have a look at how my tipping went. We'll then review each and every one of the round 7 matches. We'll have a look at my team of the week and the award leaders after round 7. So that's Brownlow and MVP voting. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on this video. Let me know what you think. Check me out. The podcast goes on YouTube and Spotify. Don't forget to also check me out on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the fun ones. But yeah, we'll jump into the latest news to start this week's episode. Quite a bit happened on the weekend, so we've had some injuries. Pau Pepper's out for the season with an ACL, I believe. Sad news for him. So it wasn't a great start to the weekend. Same match, Higgins has been suspended for 3 weeks. I believe St Kilda have come out and said that they are going to challenge that. So there will be a tribunal hearing tomorrow night, Tuesday night, for Jack Higgins. We'll see how he goes in that. I don't think he'll get off, but hey, I don't understand how the tribunal always works, and I'm not going to start pretending to. What else has happened? Riley West for the Bulldogs has been offered a week for a head-high contact, and there was someone else that has been offered a week. Who was that? Marbal Chow has been offered a week for his Sunday night altercation. Waitman looks like he's out for anywhere 6 to 12 weeks with an elbow. Dangerfield's probably going to be missing a few with a hamstring. I've probably missed a couple injuries because it did seem like there was quite a few across the weekend. But I think that's the major ones there. Other big bit of news is the news that came through today. Rory Sloane from Adelaide, absolute great of the game, has retired as of today. So I think he played 255 games. He was an absolute star. And he's announced his retirement today. So sad time for him and for the Adelaide football team. We'll jump in and have a look at how my tipping went for this weekend. And technically, 8 out of 9. Obviously, there was a draw in there. As all 40 tippings give that a tick, I'm giving myself a tick for that one. Little disappointing that I didn't get 9 of 9, because in my actual footy tipping, you might not believe this, but I did actually get 9 of 9. I went Geelong. I think I did that before I did my podcast, and then just never changed it to Carlton. Didn't have enough to convince myself to change it. So technically, did kind of get 9 of 9, but what we posted on the potty, we got 8. So it's not a terrible week. Most people probably got between 7 and 9. Obviously, the Carlton one was one that could go either way. Collingwood Essendon could have gone either way, but everyone gets that right thanks to the draw. Most people would have tipped GWS. Everyone would have tipped Melbourne. Port Adelaide, everyone would have gone with. Adelaide, everyone would have gone with. Fremantle, most people would go with. Probably a few here and there. And then you'd imagine most people went Gold Coast and most people went Sydney. So not the toughest week. But after a couple bad weeks, that tipping was very difficult. It's probably a good thing that we got a relatively straightforward week this week. we'll now run through each match from the weekend. I don't have graphics over on the side this week. I have kind of changed how I do my match reviews. So I no longer have those graphics. I have slightly different ones, but they don't quite work for the screen. Whether I'll add them in at some point, I don't know. But for now, you're just going to listen to me talk about each game. First up, we had Richmond and Melbourne on Wednesday night at the MCG. Massive game, massive crowd, massive everything, and the first half was average. The football quality wasn't great, and yeah, it was a 1 point margin to Richmond at halftime of all teams. Melbourne did turn it on a bit in the second half and got the job done. That's kind of all they really needed to do, was to get the points, and that's what they did. But yeah, the first half was not the most entertaining football you'll ever watch. Key facets of this game were, I don't know, Melbourne are just a better team, I guess. They ended up with 26 shots to 16 throughout the match. So they only kicked 13-7 from 26 shots. So they had a lot of missed shots. Their forward efficiency was pretty good in that terms, other than the fact that they weren't converting them. So they probably could have won by more. They dominated the free kick count, but that doesn't always mean that the umpiring was biased. Clearances. Melbourne did dominate clearances. They didn't dominate centre clearances. They were very good at stoppage clearances. Contested ball was pretty level. Turnovers, not too much difference. There was a lot of marks in this match. Melbourne won the marks 129 to 108. Both of those marks are tallies are above the average amount of marks a team would have in a game. Melbourne led most of the way outside of a little bit around half time. Tackle count was won by Richmond, but only just. So yeah, nothing outstanding from both teams, but the better team was Melbourne, and they won. Key things from the players. Jake Lever was probably best on ground in my opinion. He was very, very good. I gave him a 96 out of 100. Other good players, Max Gawn was very good. Stephen May was good. Petrarca was good as always for Richmond. Their best players were below the top probably 4 or so Melbourne players, but Nankervis was good, Baker was good, Vlosten has continued on his fine season. Overall, Melbourne the better team, and Melbourne got the win. We then headed on over to Anzac Day footy. This was a massive game at the MCG, the traditional Essendon versus Collingwood game, number 29, and it ended up the same result as Anzac Day number 1, which was a draw. There's been a lot of discussion since then, whether we should have a draw or whether there should be extra time. I'm firmly in the belief that during regular season, a draw is a draw. It's one of the possible results. And I don't think either team can really argue with a draw, really. Both teams probably think they deserve it at points, and also with other parts of the game probably think they were lucky to get away with a draw. Essendon kicked the first 5, kicked 6 of the first 7, and looked dominant in the first 5 minutes especially. Collingwood clawed their way back, wasted some opportunities. Second half, Essendon wasted some opportunities, or even in the second quarter, Essendon started to waste some. Highlight of the match was probably what would likely be mark of the year. I can't see anyone beating it. Definitely there hasn't been a better mark this year yet, and it's very unlikely I will see a better mark. It was an absolute cracker by Jamie Elliott. I think that was deep into the third quarter, or halfway through the third quarter, which was a very important mark and goal from him. So go check that out if you haven't seen it, but I'm sure you have. other things that were in the game. Langford had a shot to win the game with about a minute and a half to go, maybe less. And he just missed it, tied it up, and that's where it ended. Stats in the game, Essendon dominated a lot of the categories. They had 80 odd disposals more. They had only 2 extra inside 50s, so the inside 50 count was pretty even. However, the shots were dominated by Collingwood. So Collingwood had 29 shots for 25 scores. Obviously, Myercheck kicked 2 out on the full in the last quarter. 2 easy-ish ones to score from. And Essendon had just the 24 shots. So that's one stat that Collingwood won. Free kick count was even for both teams, 22 apiece, which, little interesting note, this is the first time Essendon this year has not won the free kick count. And yeah, they drew it. Clearances were absolutely dominated by Essendon. That was an absolute demolition job by Zach Merritt and the Essendon midfield all day long. They dominated the clearances. Centre clearances were 19 to 8, which is one of the bigger margins in centre clearances you'll see. Stoppage clearances were also pretty well dominated by Essendon, 21-15. Contested ball, uncontested ball, Essendon won both of those categories. Probably the main area that Collingwood won or got themselves into this game was turnovers. Collingwood didn't turn it over much and caused turnovers the other way, so they were plus 10 in turnovers, or minus 10, depends which way you look at it, but Collingwood were on the better side of that. And tackling pressure, so Collingwood got 67 tackles to 50. So that was a major area of that game. Marks and stuff were dominated by Essendon, as most of the game was. So Essendon probably, in that regard, feel like they were hard done by. Collingwood created a lot of opportunities, though, from the little ball they had and the fact that they didn't get any clearances. They just defended very well and transitioned the ball pretty well on most occasions and got plenty of shots and good shots at it, but just didn't convert them. Best players, I think, no doubt about who was best on ground. He got the Anzac Day medal. Zach Merritt was an absolute star in the midfield. Langford kicked 4, could have kicked the match winner, but just missed it. I think he was very good. Darcy Parish probably played his best game of the year. Nick Martin was good. He kicked a goal, a very important goal. McGrath was good. Stringer kicked a cracker in the first quarter. Most of the Essendon team was pretty good. For Collingwood, Nick Dacos I have on top. He had plenty of it. He was very important. He kicked a crucial goal. He was very good. Darcy Moore in the back line was very huge for Collingwood in keeping Essendon away from the goals at times. Myercheck could have been best on. Had an absolute blinder, except for the fact that he just couldn't convert his goals. I think he ended up with 3 goals, 4 and 2 out on the fulls. So he quite easily could have had 7 goals in this game and been the match winner, but unfortunately for him, it didn't end up that way. Jamie Elliott kicked 2 goals and took an absolute screamer, as previously mentioned. That's where the game is. Both teams probably not at their best, but they get the draw and they move on to this week, where Collingwood have a big game against Carlton, which probably their most important game of the season so far, just to try and keep momentum going. We also had a second game on Anzac Day. This was at Manuka Oval, GWS v Brisbane. Speaking of important games, this was a massive game for Brisbane. They obviously had a tough start to the year, 2-4 going into this one. They really didn't want to lose this one, and spoiler alert, they did lose. First half time it was 10-point margin. I think GWS were probably the slightly better team in the first half, but it was certainly close enough that it could still go either way. But third quarter, GWS came out and kicked 5-0, and from there it was all over. GWS ended up winning it by 43 points, 44 points. No, 54 points. Jeez, my math is good. So yeah, they won easily in the end. Brisbane's season is not looking good for them. 2-5. You can't rule them out because they could win 12 of the next 15 and still make finals. And if they make finals, then you wouldn't want to rule them out. But the way they're playing football at the moment, you can't see them doing that. Disposals were dominated by GWS. They played their normal game. They're only +5 on inside 50s, +6 on shots. But in the end, that's all they need to do to get a dominant win. Brisbane were poor inside 50 again. Poor at kicking at goal. To get only 8 goals from 21 shots is not great. When GWS got 17 goals from 27 shots. Clearances were reasonably even. Contested ball wasn't too dissimilar. Uncontested ball was dominated though by GWS, and didn't turn it over. Which, if you're getting more of the ball and turning it over less, then it's usually a pretty good sign that you're going to be in with a good chance of winning the game. Best players, GWS. Tom Green was huge. Harry Himmelberg, he was very good. I gave him a 95. Perryman was very good. Josh Kelly, once again, he's had a great season. He was great again. Callum Brown kicked 3. He was good. Bit of a bounce back. He'd had a couple quiet weeks. Riccardi also kicked 3. He was good for Brisbane. Dunkley I had on top. I gave him a 91. Harris Andrews, he's been good all year. He got a 90. And then a bit of a drop off to the next level. I mean, clearly the better team out there was GWS, and at the moment Brisbane they just look off the pace. They look like they're struggling a bit. So as it stands, I can't see them turning it around, but they still have all the makings of what made the finals last year. So I wouldn't completely write them off just yet, but they will need to start showing something at some point. Friday night footy, we went over to Adelaide Oval. We've had a lot of Adelaide Oval Friday night games. To be honest, I quite like them. So this was Port Adelaide St Kilda. St Kilda needed the win. To be honest, they were 2-4 going into this, and they lost. So they're also, like Brisbane, 2-5, and they just, for where they started their season, just going down to Geelong in week 1, then round 2 they beat Collingwood, and their season looked like, hey, they're up and about and they're flying towards an improved season. That has not eventuated. They've dropped now to 2-5, and they need to start winning games at some point soon, otherwise their season could get away from them very quickly. The main reason they were still in this game was poor kicking from Port Adelaide, who kicked 11-16, including 1 goal 8 in the first quarter. So 10 extra scoring shots from Port Adelaide to win by 10 points is not ideal, but they got the job done, and that's all that matters. Inside 50s +7 for Port Adelaide. Shots on goal +13 for Port Adelaide. So the forward efficiency in getting shots was huge from Port, but their inability to kick a goal was almost costly for them. St Kilda supporters complaining about the umpiring, which was 25 free kicks to 10, but I don't think there was any game-changing decisions in there. Clearances were reasonably even, 34-30 in Port's favour. Once again, though, they had more of the ball and turned over the ball a lot less, just like GWS. So they had +35 and 38 touches, but had 7 less turnovers. So it's very hard to lose games of football when you're turning it over less but have the ball more. Tackle count was huge from Port Adelaide, as it has been most of this year. They had 83 tackles, which is a pretty massive number in dry weather footy. And they were plus 28 on St Kilda. So most key facets, Port Adelaide won this. And I don't think it's any big call to say that they probably should have won by more than they did. I would have, looking at the stats, looking at the shots, you'd expect that they win by 35, 40 plus. But on the day, St Kilda stayed in it. Port Adelaide, Charlie Dixon kicked 4 goals. He was good. Best on ground I gave to Ollie Wines. I thought he was very good. And Jace Burgoyne for Port Adelaide was second best. He was very good as well. William Drew continued his great season. He's been very good for St Kilda. Jack Sinclair was clearly their best. Wilkie was good. Wangani Malira was good. But overall, Port Adelaide had the best couple players and probably the best. Just deserved to win, to be honest. St Kilda need to turn their season around very quickly because it is snowballing for them. Saturday afternoon game, probably what was looking like the least exciting game of the weekend. This one and one of the Sunday games down at Blunston. North Melbourne hosting Adelaide. North Melbourne obviously hadn't won a game, still haven't won a game. Adelaide were going into this 1-5. They've now got that to 2-5, so maybe their season's not completely dead, but they've got a long way to go. Right from the start, this game was pretty much over. First quarter was 5-2, second goal was 6-4, and then third quarter was 5-1. North Melbourne did kick a few goals late, which kind of made it semi-respectable. They still lost by 57 points, so hardly anything to write home about. As you would expect, when a team kicks 20 goals 18, they did dominate every stat pretty much, Adelaide. They had 70 odd more disposals, they had 19 extra inside 50s, they had 18 extra shots, they had 9 extra clearances, they dominated contested ball, dominated uncontested ball. It was just from start to finish was Adelaide dominating. Outside of that last 5 minutes when North Melbourne kicked, I think the last 4 goals maybe. Tackle count was even dominated by Adelaide. It's kind of a little bit of a worry for North Melbourne, the fact that they lose disposal count and tackle count so regularly. You'd think if the other team had the ball so much that maybe you'd win the tackle count occasionally, but doesn't seem to be the way. Inside 50s tackles, Adelaide laid 19, which is a pretty massive number, and just kind of shows you where this game was. Best players for Adelaide, Rory Laird was massive. I gave him best on ground. Jordan Dawson was also very good. Rankin also good. He bounced back from a not so good game last week. He kicked 4 goals. Taylor Walker was good with 2 goals. Ben Keys was also good with 2. For North Melbourne, Luke Davies-Yanaki, I think, was the best player. But was he in the top 5 on the ground? Maybe just 5th. That's how clear Adelaide were out in front of this one. And he was clearly better than the next best player for North Melbourne. They had Serha, he played well, he kicked 3 goals, but from limited opportunities. Wardlaw was okay. Colby McKercher probably played one of his better games so far. I mean, all these games have been solid, but that was probably one of his best. Sheasel was also okay, but they just were nowhere near the mark in this game. This was one of their worst performances of the year, I think. I kind of feel sorry for North Melbourne supporters. Not so much for the club, because, I mean, a lot of it's on them, but definitely their supporters. They've had a tough few years, and at the moment it's hard to see where that's going to turn around. They do have some good young players, but they certainly don't have that 24 to 28 year old crop that is good. they're just not there. Then we go to what possibly is game of the round. Looking at it on paper was probably game of the round, and it certainly lived up to it. It was entertaining. It's probably the most I've enjoyed watching a game this year, I reckon. Geelong Carlton at the MCG. Geelong got them early, mainly because they kicked straight. First quarter was 5 goals, 2:32 to 2 goals, 8:20 for Carlton. Geelong kind of just held that lead most of the way. They did get out by 19 points at half time before Carlton brought it back. Then with about 10 minutes to go, Geelong had got the lead back out to 20 something, or about 30 points roughly, before Carlton came flying back, got within a kick, and then Geelong kicked the last just to steady and end up winning by 13 points. When I say kick, I don't know if they got within 6 points. It was around about 6 points, 6, 7, 8 points, somewhere around there. Both teams probably think they deserve the win. I think Geelong probably deserve it in the end, just due to their efficiency going forward. It's a major factor in games. The major discrepancy in this game to result was Carlton winning inside 50s by 21 and losing the match. Shots were very similar. Carlton had 30, Geelong 28. But that 21 difference in inside 50s, I don't know exactly because I haven't actually looked at it, but that would be very close to the biggest differential in inside 50s to lose a match this season, I reckon. 66 is a huge number. You're not going to lose too many games when you get 66 inside 50s. But in this case, Carlton did, mainly because of their inefficiency at kicking for goal. Like, it wasn't terrible in the end. If you take out the first quarter, Carlton kicked 13 goals 7 after quarter time, so they turned it around. But just the fact that they wasted so many chances in that first quarter, they could have been definitely leading. They should have been. They had some easy shots. They probably should have kicked at least 6 goals in that first quarter, but they didn't, and that probably is what cost them in the end. Clearances were won by Carlton. Contested ball was pretty similar. Uncontested ball wasn't too dissimilar either. Turnovers were similar. It was just, the main difference in this game. You can look at all the stats. They're so similar across the board, except for that inside 50 count and the inability for Carlton to turn those inside 50s into goals, which is a little bit surprising with the fact that Geelong were missing a key backman, but that's how it goes, I guess. Best players, Paddy Cripps was best on ground. I think he was absolute dominant. Again, he's been so good all year, as per usual. I gave him a 96. Also for Carlton, Pitane was very good as ruckman. Kennedy was good. Akers was good. Wiedering was good down back. Charlie Curnow kicked 3 goals. Could have kicked more. He was good. For Geelong, best player, I think I went with Jeremy Cameron. He kicked 5 goals. He was huge for them. Myers was very good. He kicked 2. Cam Guthrie in his first game of the year was very good. Max Holmes, he's been good most of this year. And Zach Tui was very good. He kicked 3 goals, which is very important. I think he got a very good rundown tackle in the first quarter as well. He was very important. So Geelong win in what was kind of against the run of play, kind of, but also they deserved the win. They were the better team. And their season continues undefeated. They somehow just keep getting it done week in, week out. Where's their first loss going to come? Who knows? But at the moment, they're probably up there. Definitely, you can't see them dropping out of the top 2 based on what they're showing at the moment. They just keep getting the job done. We went to Saturday night football over in WA. Fremantle hosting the Bulldogs. Bulldogs coming off a great win against St Kilda the week before, Friday night the week before. Fremantle coming off a terrible loss to West Coast the previous Saturday night, and it was hard to know what we were going to expect from this game. Bulldogs, as I mentioned last week's podcast, tend to struggle a little bit the week after a really good performance. They didn't this week. They played pretty well, but they didn't win, so that's kind of still not great for them. Fremantle bounced back though. They'd had a rough 3 weeks in a row losing. 2 of them were massive forgives, obviously, but the week before against West Coast was definitely not a forgive. That's where they came into this. Freo led pretty much all the way through. I think Bulldogs only led for about 7 minutes for the whole match. But it was within 2 goals all the way through until the last maybe 3 or 4 minutes, where Fremantle kicked, I think, 3 goals in the last 5 minutes and ended up winning by 24 points. Most stats pretty similar. Main difference is Freo had 29 shots to 22, and the absolute domination that Fremantle had in the middle. 47 clearances to 30, led by Sarong and Fife and Brayshaw, really. Those 3 for Fremantle were all massive. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know that they had a lot of handballs and a lot of clearances between those 3 players. So they were very good. Turnover count Fremantle were pretty bad, plus 9, but not terrible. Tackles were good by Bulldogs. Obviously they lost weight in the first couple of minutes, which is never ideal to lose your player to a sub in within 5 minutes of the game, but it is what you kind of got to deal with. Draper obviously also got injured for Fremantle and got subbed out, but that was a little bit later on in the game. Fremantle were the better team on the night, I think, and got the win. It's always tough for teams going to Optus Stadium. It's a ground that both Fremantle and West Coast play pretty well. Obviously, West Coast are a little bit down at the moment, being that their team's probably not quite as good as most teams, but it is a tough ground to play at for visiting teams. Best players, Sarong and Fife, were both outstanding. I gave them both 97. The work that both of them did, I gave Fife the slight edge. I did give him best on ground. They were both very good though. James Aish was very good as well. Bailey Boundfield was good. As I mentioned, Brayshaw was very good. Hayden Young was good. A lot of Fremantle players played very well. For the Bulldogs, Bailey Dale for the second week in a row was probably their best player. Tim English was very good. Treloar continued his fine record over the last, pretty much the whole season. He's been very good. Bontempelli was good. And then a bit of a gap before the next players. So the Bulldogs have a big game coming up this week now to try and steady the ship. They obviously were going well. Last week was a massive win for them. So a loss isn't the end of the world for them, but they certainly will be wanting to come out and bounce back on that one this weekend. We then head to the 2 Sunday games. First up, we had Gold Coast hosting West Coast, and as has been the case, Gold Coast won at home. So this year, this gets them to 4-3 on the year. 4 games on at home, they've got 4 wins. 3 games not at home, they've got 3 losses. So not the ideal record, but at the same time, they're taking care of business at home. West Coast came out firing. I thought for a moment we were going to have 3 wins in a row for the Eagles, and I was about to eat my hat. But the second half came around and Gold Coast kind of dominated. 6 goals to 1 in that third quarter was the main difference in the game. Seeing half-time, Gold Coast were up by 3 points, and they won the last quarter by 3 points. So you take out the third quarter and it's a very close game. But in the end, Gold Coast were clearly the better team, and West Coast did well, but they were never really in it. and I think the scoreboard flattered them for most of the game. Kind of like the Carlton game, the inside 50s were massive. Gold Coast plus 32. Obviously, Gold Coast turned that into a win, whereas Carlton didn't. 28 to 18 shots is quite a big discrepancy as well. So the fact that the margin was what it was, which is 37 points, you can see 37 is probably on the lower side of what you'd expect. I'd probably say about 50 points based on what I watched. Clearances were dominated by Gold Coast. They have the guns in the middle there, and they got it done. Matt Rao, Noah Anderson, Miller, those three were all huge, and even the ruckman Jared Witts dominated. So, yeah, just a domination in most stat categories. The fact that the West Coast were probably so close was mainly because they kicked 12 goals 3. That sort of accuracy does tend to help you, but even Gold Coast kicked pretty straight. 17-10 is a decent return. Tackle count, Gold Coast won that as well, so that's usually a sign that if you get more of the ball and more tackles, it's a good sign. As I said, best players, I gave Noah Anderson best on ground. He had 2 goals and a lot of. Miller was very good, Rao was very good, and Jared Witts they were the 4 best players on the ground, in my opinion. They were all outstanding. For West Coast, Elliot Yeo, I think he's been in the top 2 players for West Coast every week this year. I think he's been top 2 in every game. Waterman, he continued his fine form. He kicked 4, so he's gone 6, 5 and 4 the last 3 weeks. 15 goals in 3 weeks is a great return, and a key reason why West Coast are starting to look a lot better. McGovern was good, Cole was good, Duggan was good, but at the end of the day, they were just not up to the level that Gold Coast were on the day. So yeah, final game of the weekend, 9 games. We're back to 9 games for a few weeks before we have buys again. So that's kind of exciting. The last game was Hawthorn hosting Sydney down at the MCG. Buddy's return to Hawthorn, which was good to see. Crowd got out there, cheered Hawthorn on, even though, let's be honest, their season isn't going great. And this game went about as expected. In the end, Sydney smoked them. 6 goals to 2 in the first quarter, 4 to 1 in the second quarter, 5 to 1 in the third, and 3 to 1 in the fourth. Ends up being 18-10, 118 to Hawthorn's 5-12, 42. Stats were all dominated, mainly by Sydney. They had a lot more of the ball. Inside 50s, surprisingly, Hawthorn only lost that by 3, which is a good sign for Hawthorn. Their ability to turn that into shots and goals was not great. Like, they did kick 5 goals, 12. You kick, that's what, 17 scoring shots. You kick 8 goals, 9. And all of a sudden it's not great, but you're 15, 20 points better off. Sydney had 9 extra shots, so they probably deserved the win. Hawthorn won clearances, which is another good sign for them. I can see Hawthorn kind of being a team that gets better as the season goes on. They finished reasonably well last year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again this year. I don't think it's all doom and gloom for them. I think North Melbourne, there's not much positives. Hawthorn West Coast at least have some, and yeah, Hawthorn showed that here. They won the clearances by 5. They won contested ball by 18, but lost uncontested ball massively, like huge. Minus 77 in minus 75 in uncontested ball. So that's just kind of a sign where it is. They were very good at contest, but maybe not so good at stopping the run and loose ball play that Sydney absolutely dominate at. the Sydney midfield is just insanely good and only going to get better with Luke Parker coming back after a massive game in the VFL. That was this game. Sydney hunted pretty well, tackled well, and that's probably the difference. Just they're kind of a better polished team. They probably have better players and better polish. Best players. Sydney were so good. Legitimately, you could make a case for probably 10 plus players to be in the top 3 or 4 on the ground. I gave best on ground to Isaac Heaney. He had 22 touches and 3 goals. He's very good. He's been good all year. He continued it here. He was good. Oliver Florent was my second best. Then Nick Blakey, Justin McInerney, Chad Warner. Rowbottom in his 100th was very good. Gordon was good. Jake Lloyd was good. I could pretty much read out their whole team and just say good because they were all very, very good across the ground. For Hawthorn, Dylan Moore was very good again. So that's 2 weeks in a row he's been in there. Either their best player or very close to. Warple is continued his good season. He's going very well. I think Scrimshaw was good after getting yelled at quarter time. Newcomb was good. Sicily was good. And then they just had... They have good players, but then I just don't think they have the consistency across the board. They're lower... their bottom 5 to 10 players on their field is probably consistently costing them games, I think. Just not getting the overall team output that, say, a Sydney does. Obviously, a Sydney is one of the best teams and hard to compare Hawthorn against, but that's kind of where I see it. Next up, so that's all the games. That's 9 games from round 7. We'll have a quick look at this week, what games are coming up and where everybody is on the ladder. So Geelong sit on top and they've got Melbourne coming up this week. So that's going to be a cracking game. Obviously 2 top 4 teams currently on the ladder. Geelong definitely a top 2 team based on what we've seen. Melbourne probably sitting in that 3 to 6 range. Be a great game. A lot of good rivalry games this weekend actually. Battle of the Bridge, 2nd versus 3rd, Sydney versus GWS. That's going to be huge. So that will be massive. 5th on the ladder is Port Adelaide. They have their showdown. I was about to call it a derby. It is not a derby, it's the showdown. So they're 5th on the ladder. They'll be playing 12th Adelaide, which will be a cracker. 6th on the ladder is Carlton. They have a rivalry match against Collingwood, who are 10th on the ladder. Big game. Obviously, Carlton have lost 2 of their last 3, and Collingwood coming off a draw. Both teams will be wanting this win very badly. 7th on the ladder is Essendon. They head over west to play West Coast Eagles, who are 15th. All of a sudden, that looks like a tougher match than it probably did 3-4 weeks ago. Essendon coming off a draw, but even a loss over there isn't the end of the world for them. They're sitting 4.5 wins from 7 games. 8th on the ladder is Fremantle. They are travelling to Melbourne to play Richmond in what is a very important game for them. They got their win last week. Can they convert that into 2 wins in a row? We will see. Gold Coast, they are playing the Q Clash against Brisbane, who are 13th on the ladder. Gold Coast haven't won an away game yet, and this one is at the Gabba, so we'll see how that goes for them. Bulldogs, they're 11th. They're playing against Hawthorn. You'd think Bulldogs would win this and all of a sudden get themselves back to 50%, 4-4, and in a solid spot after 8 rounds. But, I mean, they could lose it. You never know. Hawthorn have shown some decent signs, and Bulldogs do have this ability to be inconsistent and just not show up to games. St Kilda are 14th on the ladder. They play against the bottom-ranked North Melbourne. It's hard to see St Kilda losing this one. It's a game they need to win. They're obviously 2 and 5. This will just kind of steady them if they can get the win, which you'd imagine they would. And then that's all 9 games coming up this weekend. We'll have a quick run through of my team of the week. I've been doing this every week, and I haven't been putting it on the podcast mainly because I've been a little bit behind on getting them completed each week. But I've put in a bit of hard work over the weekend, and I already have the team of the week sorted. So here it is. Without further ado, just know that there's a lot of good players every weekend, and it's hard to squeeze them all in. But this is what I've come up with. So the back line, Florent from Sydney, Lever from Melbourne, Darcy Moore from Collingwood were all outstanding. Half-back line of James Aish, Harry Himmelberg and Bailey Dale. The midfield line, I also want to point out, I know that these players don't play on the wing. I don't really care. I go 6 best defenders, 5 best midfielders, 6 best forwards, and the best ruck on the field, and then pretty much the next best of each position on the interchange. That's just how I do it, and that's how I'm going to continue doing it. So anyway, midfield line, Tom Green, Rory Laird was outstanding, Noah Anderson for Gold Coast. On the half-forward line, Rankin, it was very good. Langford for the Bombers, Myers from Geelong. Full forward line, Dylan Moore from Hawthorn, Jeremy Cameron and Taylor Walker. The ruck line is Jared Witts, he was outstanding. Sarong and Fife, the 2 Fremantle midfielders, were both great. And then on the interchange bench, I've got Blakey from Sydney, Waterman for his 4 goals for the Eagles, Paddy Cripps for Carlton, and Maxi Gawn from Melbourne. So that's my round 7. I'll try and keep these coming out each week. And I might post all of them so far on my Instagram probably this week, just so you can check them out if you want to see previous weeks. My top 15 or so in my Brownlow prediction after round 7. No surprise who's on top. Isaac Heaney. I gave him best on ground on Sunday, so he jumps up to 14 votes, sitting clear on top. Josh Kelly, Petrarca, both on 11, sitting second. Pretty much everyone up the top 10 or so have all polled votes this week for me. So sign that all the big dogs all played well. It was a good weekend of footy. 4th, I have Paddy Cripps and Zach Merritt equal on 10. They both picked up 3 votes in my voting. Next up, Sarong with 9, Tom Green with 9, and Maxi Gawn with 9. First non-midfielder is Max Gawn. Sitting in 9th, equal 9th, is Nick Dacos, Noah Anderson and Errol Goulden, all on 8. And then 12th, George Hewitt, Took Miller and Matt Rao with 7, before a big amount of players all on 6. When I say big, it's probably not that many, probably like 5 or 6 players. So yeah, that's my top 14 players in the Brownlow voting after round 7. Here's my MVP voting. Side note, there is half votes because for the draw, I kind of had to go half. I was thinking last week, I kind of blamed myself for the draw. I was like, what will I do in case of a draw? Like, will I go half? Will I just do both teams win it? And then I was like, I might not have to worry about that this season. I won't think about it yet. And then 2 days later, we had a draw. But that is football. There might be some slight changes happening to this because I'm just going back over the first couple rounds and just checking that I did it correctly, because I have kind of changed my system a little bit, but it shouldn't make much difference. Certainly not to the top of the leaderboard. It's probably just going to make a difference down lower a bit. But anyway, Isaac Heaney clearly on top, 53. Petrarch has been huge, 47. Maxi Gorn, 45. Zach Merritt is flying along. He obviously got maximum votes for a draw, which was 7.5. So he goes to 41.5 votes in fourth. Sarong's 40 in fifth. Then we've got a three-way tie between Matt Rao, Noah Anderson, and Elliot Yeo on 39, who's almost... I think he's got the highest percentage of maximum votes of any player in the league at the moment, which is a sign that he's absolutely flying. Ninth, Jeremy Cameron and Tom Green on 36. 11th is Nick Dacos on 35.5. 12th is Zach Butters. 13th is Paddy Cripps and Kelly on 33. And then in 15th is Rose, who will potentially be missing some weeks because I think he might have hurt himself on 32, as is Errol Goulden. I just had that cut off on my graphic. But yeah, that's the top 15/16 in my MVP voting after round 7. So Isaac Heaney continues on his fine season. He's clearly the my number one ranked player in ratings. I think, what did he score? Yeah, so his average per round now is 93.29, which is huge. Sam Walsh is holding second technically with 93, but he's played a lot less games. And then it's Bontempelli with 92.29. So those three are clearly the top three in terms of averages for the season so far. Coming up this week, episode 20 will be coming out on Wednesday. As per usual, we'll be looking at all of the round 8 clashes. It's going to be a big round, rivalry round basically. Most teams playing against their rivals. The ones that aren't are like West Coast Freo for some reason. That was 2 weeks ago. So the teams they're playing is obviously not a rivalry match, but outside of that, a lot of the other games are. Like we have the Q Clash, we have the Showdown, we have the Battle for the Bridge, we have Collingwood Carlton, even Melbourne Geelong is a bit of a rivalry game, so I might have missed some as well, I don't know. But big weekend of footy, it should be cracker, so we'll be back on Wednesday previewing all of those games. Don't forget, like, comment, let me know your thoughts. If you want lots of my content, I have been posting after every game on TikTok a little 50 to 60 second video of my thoughts on the game, so go check them out. I'll continue posting them each game, and yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch us on Wednesday. Peace.